Hi everybody, Jonathan here with another Twinmotion tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at creating a beautiful tropical island in under 30 minutes, and we're going to cover things like the landscape sculpting tool, how to make amazing water and oceans, beautiful vegetation, and setting up things like images and videos as well. You'll be blown away by the quality we can achieve in so little time with Twinmotion, and I really hope you enjoy this video. So thanks for watching, and let's go for it. So welcome to this new Twinmotion tutorial, and today we're going to make a beautiful tropical desert island, and we're going to start off with the days and nights template. The reason I've chosen this one because it has some really nice default settings for things like HDR skies, as you will see later. So what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm just going to go straight into my materials and drag in the wonderful water, and you can see there's a bunch of different water settings here that we can apply, and I'll just basically drag that onto the starting ground. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into my libraries for vegetation. So go to the vegetation, go to landscapes, and we're going to drag in a flat landscape. So you can see that currently the landscape is actually above the sea. Okay, so we'll basically, if I go to move that down ever so slightly, you can now see the sea on top. So that's going to form the bed of the ocean floor. But before I actually do move that up and down, I'm going to do a bit of sculpting on it first of all. So I'm going to go basically down to my sculpting brush and see if we can amend this landscape. Just before we do that though, I'm just going to basically go down to my ground and just go to some materials and just sort of see if we can actually change the material. Now you'll notice that you can't actually drag directly onto the landscape. The default is grass. Okay, so I just wanted to show you why that doesn't work. What we'll need to do is click onto our flat landscape, go to my sculpting brush or my paintbrush and apply materials and textures there. So we'll do that in a minute, but before we do, we'll go and do some sculpting. Now I really love this tool, it's such good fun to play with, and very rapidly we can basically start to sculpt our desert island. Basically the harder you sort of push, the more intensity you have on the brush, and the higher the brush will sculpt. So this is just somewhere where you can have a little bit of fun playing around with the different sort of brush sizes, and basically just kind of, you know, sculpt up what might be a bit of a shape for a desert island. Clearly we don't need to worry too much about the exact precise shape here. So really I'm just sort of playing around with the intensity and the diameter of that particular brush and messing around a little bit there. So if we select the entire landscape and basically just move it down in the Z direction, you can see that everything gets submerged below the ocean, apart from the areas that we've actually raised up for our desert island. So what we can now do is go onto the paint side of the sculpting brush and basically increase our brush size a little bit here, and basically we can start to kind of paint our desert island with different materials and some textures. Now the default is that you've actually got 4 different materials that you can use, so you have to kind of use these a little bit sparingly, and even though you can't see it, when I actually paint below the landscape below, it will actually be painting down that sort of seabed area as well. So let's zoom in a bit, navigate in. You can see a few different materials on the island so far, but basically let's add a few more. So let's click back onto our sculpting brush and let's do a little bit more sort of sculpting on the groundscape if we can. So basically I'm just sort of spraying to make some slightly higher peaks there. Let's get rid of that notification there. Basically you can see I can kind of extend my island a bit, so I'll sweep it round into a nice sort of kind of bay, if you like. So with a bit more work you can definitely make this island look much more natural than I'm doing, but I'm really kind of just showing you the overall sort of idea of this tutorial for speed. But with a bit more work we can start to make these mountains a bit more jagged and a bit more accurate. So there are various tools on the sculpting brush itself, as well as the actual sort of lifting up of the ground. As you can see, that's very effective. We can also move on to things like flattening. So this will kind of flatten the site down a little bit and take some of those harsh bumps out. And then there's also a couple of modes where you can kind of put depressions in. So here I'm just going to kind of dig out a little bit more around the island, just to create a little bit more depth, and you can kind of detect that straight away, even though this is actually under the water in the ocean itself. And this is the main bit of the model that I'm actually going to focus on. So, you know, when I zoom in, you can see that water looks really nice, and we've got that sort of depth just in the distance there, when sculpting down. So what I'm going to do is pop back onto my paint. I'm going to change over to a few different materials. I definitely need some sand, so let's drag some sand with seashells. And what you can do is if you replace one of those existing materials, you can basically start to paint with that new material now. So let's just set this up, adjust the texture size a little bit and start painting with sort of shells and seaside. And you can see it looks really nice already. You're getting that nice light blue feel on that little bit of kind of coast, if you like, just under the sea and just on that kind of bit where the sea hits the beach, as it were, as well. So let's just change over to a slightly sort of rockier material here, just to kind of spray this sort of sleeper edge. So what I do, I'll speed the video up while we do a bit more work on this particular section, and then we'll come back and look at how we add things like the foliage and the trees. But yeah, really you can spend as long as you want on this little section, and I'm not spending too long, but I'm keen to just make it look relatively realistic, and I'm going to save my model. So what I do, I'll speed up this section for you, and we'll come back and look at the next bit in a second. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my new lovely tropical desert island, and basically I can keep working on this as much as I need to, but I'm pretty happy with the overall form. So now it's time to actually add some foliage. So we're going to do this with the wonderful populate tab down at the bottom. We're going to click on foliage, and basically I'm going to search for palms and drag some of those into the dock. Just try not to select more than one at a time, otherwise you lose the selection. So just make sure you get the drop box there, drag those across one at a time. Okay, so you can see we're dragging those palms into the drop box, if you like. Now what we can do is go down and drag in a few more, having wiped out the search, and just see if there's any other palms or things. I think this one looks good, the tropical almond and the Japanese palm as well. Good, okay, so we'll select those and we'll get our brush, basically increase the density a little bit, and then we'll just pop down to the brush itself and basically just start to paint the surface of our landscape with the palms. Now what it does is nice, it puts in a mixture of the different trees and plants that you've selected in that drop box. So it kind of paints them fairly randomly in terms of density, position and sort of size, and it really creates quite a natural look. Now while you can increase things like the density and the diameter of your brush, the more you paint, the more basically it's going to keep adding. And the green sort of, if you like, fuzzy green kind of indicator is just so you can actually see where you've painted. So it's actually extremely helpful. So you can see in a matter of moments, I've been able to kind of create quite a wide variety of vegetation on my lovely island, and it's starting to look a lot more realistic already. Now what I can now do is select particular plants from the drop box and increase the density. So let's say I want to slide the density of that particular plant up. You can see I can increase the density of those and basically have a slightly different arrangement of those painted foliage, if you like. We can also kind of change the ages and sort of age them a bit to make them look a bit more mature and a bit taller. So this is looking pretty good already. Just for a few minutes work, my painted vegetation is looking nice. So once we're happy with the vegetation, we can start working on other areas. So I've gone into my library of rocks, and you can see that I'm able to drag in some sort of pretty nice bits of pre-made rock just to supplement the landscape itself. Now, of course, these are a lot more detailed than the actual landscape, so things like cliff edges and things like that are really going to work well using these. So if I hold the shift key down, I can drag off some copies and just rotate those around, and they blend in pretty nicely with the landscape. So just to create that extra bit of detail in my project, you can see. I'll probably play around with the rotation of those in a minute as well, but for now I'm just basically dragging them in. You can see I can also drag in some elements onto the ground. They're coming in pretty small, so I'm going to scale those up appropriately and click back onto my move tool and basically just copy those as well. Now if you do click onto the yellow widget, you'll notice that it will basically model itself to fit the landscape. So as the land sort of creeps into the sea there, that will kind of drop down in terms of height, and basically I'll be able to drag some more of those in and just sort of get a bit of variety. Make sure you use a few different types so you get a nice bit of variety here. click back onto my move tool, and then basically just position it with the yellow widget there, just to kind of get that looking good. Holding shift down, as I say, will give me some multiple copies of this lovely rock. And if I do want to, I can just submerge it underneath. So once I've done that, duplicating it and sort of copying it around and rotating it a little bit will just create a bit of variety. So those rocks kind of blend together and look very, very natural. So this is already looking a lot more detailed. I can also select multiple items together just over in the scene graph and then basically copy them all in one go. So you can see it becomes quite rapid, and you can basically set up some nice bit of detail with these lovely, lovely quality rocks. And if we zoom in, they really do look pretty amazing already with that gorgeous seawater. So just for a few minutes work, my desert island is taking shape, and we can now keep adding a bit more detail where required. Now, if you select multiple items like those rocks, you'll notice that every single click, what Twinmotion kindly does is places a random position and size and different choice of rock. So this is an extremely rapid way to add lots and lots of randomized detail to your project without using the brush tool actually. And actually I would say that this technique works quite well for things like the rocks, as you can see. So yeah, really quite enjoyable to do. And all of these are editable if needed. But yeah, you know, for this kind of thing, it doesn't really matter too much. We're just kind of piling them in, lots and lots of clicks to basically place them super rapidly. You know, the real beauty of Twinmotion is this real-time rendering and nature, and you'll see later when we get into the path tracing, the quality will be even more amazing once we get into real-time path tracing. So I'm just kind of sprinkling these around. I noticed that those particular cliff edges from a certain angle are a bit visible. So what I need to do is click back onto my move tool and select them. And then I'm going to go over to the rotate tool. And now look, I can just rotate those round in different orientations, including the sort of Z orientation, just to kind of rotate them around and fit them a lot better to the site. Now that looks much nicer, and they're blending in quite nicely. Okay, fantastic. So let's go into our model, do the same thing with some bushes and plants and shrubs, just to create a bit more fine detail in our project. So let's sort of zoom back a bit, just slightly in from the sort of coastline, as it were. Just start placing some of these plants. Now do be careful, don't place them too near to the sea edge, because obviously they wouldn't grow right by the edge. But you know, you'll have a bit of a water line, and these will feature, these plants, pretty much right up to the edge of the profile there. That looks really, really cool. And you can just see how quick this is to do. So as an alternative to the painting tool, just basically scattering randomly choices of specific plants. And you notice that I've tried to choose nice sort of tropical ones as well. Let's just sort of navigate around in real time. Just keep placing those as we go. Excellent. So it's looking a lot more detailed in certain areas of the project where I want it. So it's about this time I start to think about the actual views that I want to be showing. And here you can see I've gone into my libraries, and I just want to add a little bit of a focal point of a boat actually. So Twinmotion has a really nice library of these. I can just drag these in. It's not quite the right boat. That more is the right kind of scale for a little kind of yacht. Let's just rotate that round, just sort of coming into the bay a little bit further away, just to give a nice little focal point. And then maybe a nice little kind of dinghy inflatable here, just to sort of show someone's been exploring. So you can see that already adds some nice little kind of human sort of focal points, if you like, in a way that will kind of add to my library. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go into my user libraries, and as well as actually adding more plants, and if you've seen my other video on globe plants, you'll know I'm a big fan of globe plants. They're absolutely amazing, so I just wanted to touch on those again. I've actually got these in my user library, and these come natively in Twinmotion format. And if you look, they are super detailed. So basically you can zoom into them and see absolutely gorgeous sort of level of quality here. And basically these plants are a little bit different from the Twinmotion libraries. So I recommend let's put those a bit away from the shoreline, and just remember to grab the yellow widget if you want them to snap. Okay, so that's really cool. We've added a few globe plants just to touch on that, but make sure you check out my other video on this. And there's a really nice discount coupon code if you're interested in getting some of those wonderful globe plants. But I definitely recommend them to supplement your libraries of Twinmotion plants. Okay, so next up, I'm going to try and bring the project to life with some more things from my user library, but I'm going to focus on the wildlife by dragging in things like the butterflies, just to kind of add a bit of life into the scene. You can see they're really, really nice. They just add a little bit of focal point, and you just drag them in. They're already pre-animated, and they just look great in terms of just adding a bit of life. We can add some fish, just drag in a shoal of fish here. Moving it vertically down underneath the sea creates a beautiful sort of natural focal point of those fish swimming in the kind of low waters near the beach there. And it looks absolutely amazing. Just be careful you don't have them swimming above the water too much as well. Finally, I'm going to drag in some seagulls and a few more fish just to kind of keep adding a bit more life to my tropical island. Looks nice and also just gives a bit of visual interest really. So this is one of the real beauties of Twinmotion over other rendering software, the ability to add things like pre-animated birds and people, trees, cars, that sort of thing. So let's have a couple of pigeons down by the seafront here, just to kind of create a nice little focal point for one of my views that I think I'll be using. Okay, fantastic. I'm really enjoying this. This is definitely fun to do, and the scene is looking pretty amazing already. So let's move now to the media dock, and you'll notice that because I chose the day and night skies template, basically I've got loads of nice ready-made sort of HDRI sky setups. So I'm just going to kind of click through a few of these. The only downside, of course, is they were saved as a template from a specific position. So you will have to adjust your camera zone, but that's okay. We can move to our camera point, choose our different sort of lighting. So just navigating around using the different speeds to get down a bit more to eye level. And I think if I want to, I can click M, which will send me down to sort of pedestrian mode so that I kind of hit the ground and get a nice sort of eye level view. So when we're ready, we can basically update the view. So in order to do that, just make sure you go down, let's just tweak the lighting a little bit, it looks a little bit dark, and click on the refresh button for the particular view. But I'm really happy with that, that looks quite nice. What I think I'll do is drag that view, let's update it and drag it to the front. So I know that that's one of mine. So I'm going to go back to one of the starting sort of day and night HDRI skies that Twinmotion have sort of provided for us, which actually gives some really nice different options for lighting. Let's navigate through to another position and let's just click update on the camera. So now that's that view collected. And maybe we'll just tweak the lighting and the weather, get a little bit more rain. That makes the ground look a little bit wetter, which can look a bit natural as well. I'll show you a bit more on the HDRIs in a minute, but basically I can keep refining my view and just sort of navigate around until I'm really, really happy. And then when I'm ready, I can just click update, just searching for that lovely camera view. Now this is probably one of the strongest aspects of real-time rendering, the fact that you can just search for that perfect view, just with a bit of foliage there in the foreground. I'll slow my camera down and just sort of optimize that view, just looking through towards the bay there. Click update and we're off. So here you can see I've chosen another HDRI background. Now this one looks absolutely stunning. I love the reflections and the skies. And honestly, I didn't really have to do anything at all. I just started with the Twinmotion template and just basically do some updating. One thing to be aware of, just remember not to save this particular file or it will save your day and night template, which isn't a major problem, but it's always good to do a save as. Hence I've called it Desert Island. And you can see already that is looking pretty stunning. So if I did want to, I could maybe put in a person just to kind of see what the scene looks like with a person in. There's a big range of people that Twinmotion provides and we can just drag and drop them in. But you know what guys, I think it looks nicer. It's sort of a little bit more isolated. And I think I like the idea of telling the story of this boat approaching the island. And maybe, you know, maybe there's some sort of people who've been exploring before, but there's no one actually on the island right now. I think that's kind of nice. So just the sort of perspective of looking at that boat coming into the bay there looks amazing. And basically I can set up as many views as I would like, which I'll do, and I'll render some of these out for you at 4K, and we'll also do some animations as well. So the thing to do, just keep refining your view and make sure you just keep working on things like the quality levels and maybe things like the rotation of the HDRI. So go down to my HDRI, I can tweak the brightness a little bit, but if I want to, I can actually just slide that rotation around. Oh, goodness me, look at that. That lovely sunrise coming over the kind of horizon. Looks absolutely incredible. So this is the beauty of Twinmotion. It's what I love about it. It's fully versatile and so creative as well. And really quick and fun to do. So I think I'm going to select one more view, and I'm going to speed up my camera a bit, and I'm interested to see what it would look like looking back from the boat onto the coast. So I'm just going to navigate around to my boat, slow the camera down a little bit because it does go quite zippily, and basically just see if I can kind of get a view on top of that boat, and don't fall off, just be careful. Okay, that's looking nice. So I've just got that glimpse of the island from that perspective of the boat. I love how the boat sort of rocks in the ocean. That's a really nice thing about using the ocean material, and that extra movement as well. It's very sort of gamified, I think you'll agree. So this looks fantastic. Let's go to my camera. I just want to try zooming in or zooming out just to see what effect that has. And this is a good time to try things like the depth of field. So if we kind of just update that view, okay, and let's open up the camera effects. I'm going to play around with the vignetting to get that nice darkness around the edge. I can also go depth of field, enable the depth of field, and basically start to change my slider. You tend not to notice the depth of field that much until you get a very sort of large focal length, and then suddenly you can see that nice depth of field kicking in. So yeah, you've got to get down to, you know, 20-30 degree camera lens. And that will basically help on the focal length side of things. So depth of field is definitely something I would say it's worth taking the time to master, and you can just enable or disable it depending on how it looks with the view. But it definitely can be a little bit fiddly to get the right amount of blurring, and that's something that will come with a bit of practice in there. As well as clicking on the pick focus, you can of course type in numbers to set the distance. Okay, so here's my views that I can review. I'm interested to see how they look with path tracing. So in Twinmotion, all we need to do is click a single button to enable the path tracer, and then we can pop on and increase or decrease the levels of quality so that it kind of takes a bit longer in our preview. But you will notice with the path tracing on, the rendering is just a sort of definitely step up in terms of higher level of quality. Things like the lighting and the GI and global illumination, certainly things like reflections as well. Just be careful not to go below the sea. Okay, so I'm just sort of searching for that perfect view. And I think what we'll do is we'll whip over to this part of the island and just have another view. That looks nice, coming back there. And maybe just sort of pan the camera and then basically click plus. So we'll drag that one to the front just so it's part of the pack at the front there. So I've got a really nice sort of set of views that I can review, some with path tracing and some without. Just pan back a little bit. Let's just click on update to perfect that particular view, and basically let's try the path tracing. So just before I do, I'm just keen to search for the HDRI rotation and just see how that affects the lighting of the image. And that's the beauty with the HDRIs. You can see that sun moving across the sky and how that lovely basically sun will kind of light the image. And when I click HDRI and click the path tracing together, honestly, the rendering is just absolutely stunning. So I also thought it'd be nice to set up a couple of sort of overall shots, or aerial shots of my lovely sort of tropical island. And you can see that beautiful island and sea and the HDRI. Look at those reflections, they look absolutely incredible. Just sort of frame up a really nice sort of view here. Basically, when I'm ready, I can click to create a new view. So there's a couple of things that I also want to show you on the water. Now the water looks, in my mind, pretty awesome already, but there is another option. So let me just create this particular view. So for the water, there is actually another option with the environment. You can go to the ambience and you can enable an ocean setting. Now the ocean setting provides, believe it or not, even more realistic oceans. And there's a few different presets here from Atlantic to tropical. And you can see, look at those gorgeous sort of light blue tropical waters. So this is really interesting that you can actually have different oceans for different views if you wanted. So I'll just put that tropical water on that one as well. Now you will have some settings to adjust both the height you can see, so you can pretty much sort of lower it down or flood the island completely. So just sort of play with those settings. And what you're probably going to need to do also, if you are using the ocean setting, is just disable the actual flat ground, so the starting ground, because you don't need both. So let's just bring the ocean back up. There we go. So I've got the ocean on and I've turned off the starting ground, and then I can click update. So either use a material, a water material on the starting ground as your flat surface, or just introduce the ocean setting and just play with them to see which gives you the nicest result. Personally, I really like the ocean setting here. I think that looks really cool. But yeah, I think both look really, really good in different ways. Okay, so that's a very, very nice little tip. And this image I'm very pleased with in particular. So let me just try that final ocean setting there. Let's just turn off that starting ground one more time. And you can see what's nice about the ocean is it does sort of ripple and give you kind of nice little kind of waves on the front there. But just adjust the overall height of the object itself. Okay, so when we're happy, we're going to go over to the Export tab, and you'll notice that I can basically load in the images that I've actually created during this little tutorial and basically get those rendered out. I personally render those out at 4K. I'm doing a bit of a mixture of path tracing and non-path traced. Path trace will take a little bit longer, but they will look even nicer. So let's see how these look at the end of the video. I will also set some video up, but that's for another video. So if you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I look forward to you join me for other tutorials on both Twinmotion, Vectorworks, and other 3D software. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll play out with the final renders and animations from this tutorial. Thank you.